Oh, yes, we do have Counselor Romero Worth. Let me move this television so that I can see what she's up to. Can you hear us, Counselor Romero Worth?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I'm sorry that you're not feeling well.
Thank you.
So, Counselor Romero Worth is here. However, she did ask me to chair this meeting. So I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Certainly, Chair Lindell. So as of 5:03 PM, I've noted the call to order. Counselor Cassett. Here. Counselor Lindell.
I'm here.
Counselor Faulkner.
Here.
Counselor Lee Garcia.
Here.
Chair Romero Worth.
I'm here.
Great.
Okay, so, are there any, changes to the agenda from staff?
No, Chair Lindell, no changes from staff.
Okay, so can we,
Move to approve.
thank you very much. We can have a, voice vote on that. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, how about the, consent agenda? What have we got? What have we got? Hold.
Chair Lindell, we have two items that were removed from consent for this evening. We have item 6B as in boy, which is request for the approval of a capital appropriation project agreement with the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration Local Government Division for the planning, design, and construction of Tierra Contenta Rail Extension in the total amount of $300,000 through June 30th of 2025.
Okay,
I believe we have Director Wheeler here this evening for that item. And then the other item that was pulled was item 6D, and that one is request for approval of a budget adjustment resolution to increase the budget for FY 2024 for audit preparation and accounting consulting in the total amount of $375,000. And I will be presenting on that item.
thank you. Who pulled, item B?
Item B was removed by Counselor Lee Garcia, and item D was removed by Counselor Romero Worth.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have two items pulled. Can we have a motion on the, consent agenda?
Move to approve as amended.
All in favor, say aye, please. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to presentations. I will turn this over to you, Ms. Oster.
Thank you, Chair Lindell, and it is my pleasure to introduce two new members of the finance team this evening. So we have Christopher Parker here in the first row. Christopher, if you could stand. Yes, thank you. We're really happy to have Christopher on board in the budget team. This is the start of the very busiest season for budget. Budget is always busy, but this is the, really intense time where we're putting together the operating budget proposal. So we're delighted to have Chris joining us. Chris was born and raised in Santa Fe and then left here to go to NMSU, where he received a bachelor's and a master's in accounting. He has 8 years of experience in accounting, ranging from a Fortune 100 entity to a small public accounting firm. Chris recently moved back to Santa Fe with his wife and 2 children from Denver in order to be closer to family. And he is an avid Green Bay Packers fan. Okay. We'll still be happy to have you, but and spends most of his spare time with family. Chris, is there anything that you want to add, or? Okay, well, we just wanted to welcome Chris to the team and introduce him to the committee.
Chris, welcome. I'm glad that you've come home, and Green Bay Packer fan. I'm a Bills fan. I know your pain. I know your pain. But we're thrilled to have you here. And if there's anything that, I know I speak for the other counselors also, if there's anything that we can do to make this transition easier for you, just grab us and ask, and I know we'll be happy to help.
Great. Thank you so much and welcome, Christopher. We're really glad to have you. Next, we have Destiny Duran. Destiny, can you stand and say hello? Destiny joined us as a fiscal administrator this last pay period. Destiny was born in Santa Fe and grew up in northern New Mexico in the Valley of Pojoaque. Although she is rooted in Pojoaque, she's no stranger to Santa Fe's annual festivities. Celebrating traditions such as Zozobra and fiestas with family and friends has always been a staple in Destiny's life. Destiny comes from a financial lending background. She worked for State Employees Credit Union in the Consumer and Indirect Lending Department. Destiny was recognized by the CEO of State Employees Credit Union for her kind and patient personality, as well as for the accuracy she showed in her work. Destiny proceeded to work in lending with Del Norte Credit Union as a consumer lender. However, we were able to grab her here to come over into her role as fiscal administrator for the City of Santa Fe Finance Department. So we are really glad to have Destiny as part of our admin team in finance. It's been very busy, and Armenia is amazing and she does everything all the time, and having Destiny help will be really, really appreciated. And Destiny's already hit the ground running, helping us enter transactions into Munis and getting things done in finance, which helps the whole city. So we're really glad to have Destiny on board as well.
Thank you, Director. Welcome, Destiny. You have a terrific background for the position that you've walked into, and you work with some amazing folks. You're very welcome to be here. We're glad that you made the decision to be part of the city family. And again, for the whole council, I extend a welcome, and that we're here to help you make that transition easier. However, I will say, just ask Armenia. Right?
Literally anything, not just about finance.
Yeah, just ask.
It's what I
Armenia.
do.
You know, she fixed the software on my computer this afternoon, but welcome. We're really glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Chair Lindell. We're really delighted to be recognizing our two new staff members in finance, and we are continuing to recruit to try to get our vacancy rate down as much as we can. So we look forward to introducing you to other new team members as they come on board.
Terrific. Next, Mr. Alvin Valdez, are you here? And your familiar sidekick? And also Ms. Salazar. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair and distinguished members of the Finance Committee. My name is Alvin Valdez, and I'm serving in the capacity of the Wellness and Benefits Supervisor for the City of Santa Fe. So tonight, I'm here to provide an overview of the City of Santa Fe's self-funded health insurance plan. Our discussion will encompass the plan's current performance, a retrospective analysis, and a strategic outlook moving forward. So before looking into the details, I would like to underscore several key points about our health insurance plan. So number one, the City of Santa Fe is a self-funded health insurance plan where the city pays for the employee's health costs directly rather than purchasing policies from an insurance company. Number two, our rates are set annually based on the prior year's claims data and projected medical and pharmacy costs, ensuring responsiveness to the healthcare cost fluctuations and the actual utilization trends. Number three, plan benefits. Our premium plan, where 92% of our employees carry this coverage, features no deductibles, no co-insurance, minimal co-pays, and costs substantially lower than both local and national averages, illustrating its exceptional value. We offer a superb health and wellness incentives. The city is committed to supporting our employees' health through comprehensive wellness program, We offer an employee assistance program. We have recreational center benefits. We have flexible work arrangements with paid wellness days and preventative healthcare services. Just last week, our commitment to employee wellness was recognized, and we were rewarded with the gold level Cigna Health Workforce designation for 2023. So we'll look at the annual renewal process, which is a cornerstone of our health plan, where a thorough review of claims data and health cost projections is conducted each year involving our HR team, Cigna representatives, Aon representatives, and the Benefits Advisory Committee, who all work together to evaluate and adjust the insurance plan as necessary. For those of you who don't know what the Benefits Advisory Committee is, it's comprised of representatives from various city departments and unions, where this committee plays a crucial role in guiding the development and management of the health insurance benefits plan, insurance transparency, and informed decision-making. So on a final note, please understand that this presentation is purely for informational purposes. So as we proceed tonight with tonight's presentation, please note that our intent is to simply inform, and then we can engage in constructive dialogue. We seek your valuable feedback to ensure our health insurance plan remains sustainable, adapts to healthcare economic changes, and aligns with our employees' well-being. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for this evening, Mr. Todd Burley, our Aon Health Benefits Consultant.
Good evening, Madam Chair, esteemed counselors. I am Todd Burley with Aon. We are the benefits consultant for the city of Santa Fe and have been for about the last 10 years. I want to start off with a presentation with some benchmarking. You will see in columns A and B, those are the, yes, if you could, please. Not that I can read it from here. Next slide. Okay, so this slide shows some benchmarking for the city of Santa Fe's benefits relative to column C, the state of New Mexico, and column D, a nationwide benchmark of public sector employers with between 500 and 5,000 employees. As Mr. Valdez stated, the city of Santa Fe's benefits do not have a deductible, do not have co-insurance. Most services, all services for that matter, are subject to co-pays with an out-of-pocket maximum that is well below both the state of New Mexico and the national benchmarks. You can see in columns 1 and 2, there's no deductible compared to the state, who has a $750 deductible. Nationwide, that average is about $875. Also, if we go to rows 4 and 5, the out-of-pocket maximum, that is the most that a member of the city of Santa Fe's plan can spend in a given contract year, is $2,500 for the state of New Mexico, for the city of Santa Fe, twice that for the state of New Mexico, and a little bit less than that for the benchmark. I just want to point out that the city of Santa Fe's benefits are substantially more beneficial to the employees than those of both a local competitor and national benchmark.
Todd, could I highlight one more thing on that
Yes,
slide? I think the co-insurance is also worth noting, that both the state and the benchmark have a substantial co-insurance, 30% for the state and 20% for the benchmark, and our plan has no co-insurance for the premium plan.
Everything on the premium plan is subject to copays. You'll see there are some slight differences between the non-fire union plan and the other employee plan, but both are substantially more beneficial from an employee perspective than either column C and D. Next slide, just want to give some history of the City of Santa Fe's health plan. Let's start from the bottom, actually. So for fiscal years 2017 through 2019, there were no changes to either the medical insurance benefits or to the premium rates. In fiscal year 2020, there was the recommended increase was in that middle column, was 11%. The actual increase was 9.9%. There was also, for the first time in most people's memories, but at least 10 years, an 11.4% increase to the dental rates. The dental rates have not been adjusted since FY 2020, and the current rates are adequate to fund that self-funded dental plan. As I think we are all aware, in FY 21 and 22, that was the height of the COVID pandemic. You will see increases hovering around 10% were recommended both of those years, but due to the hardships imposed on everyone during that time, including the City of Santa Fe employees, no adjustments to rates were made. In FY 21, you'll see some minor changes to benefits, some minor copay increases, some copays and visit limits for acupuncture, chiropractic services, naturopathy, and some therapies, some massage, physical, speech, and occupational therapies. But those were minor increases that did not affect the expected cost of the plan by more than about 1.5%. In FY 22, because of the 2 years of no increases to premium rates, an 11% increase was recommended. But again, there was nothing implemented at that time due to COVID hovering around for it longer than expected. Which you'll see in FY 23, because of those 3 years of no increases to premiums, medical trend rates, medical insurance trend rates during that time hovered around 5 to 6% annually. With 3 years of no increases, the city essentially had about 3 years of trend. So an 18.5% increase was recommended and implemented in FY 2023. There were 2 components to that implementation. The fire union employees opted to take the whole 18.5% increase beginning July 1st of 2022. The non-fire union employees agreed to a 12% increase with the remaining 6.5% increase to be implemented in FY 24 on top of any recommended increase at that time. Brings us into this year. So July 1st of 2023, a 0.5% increase was given to the fire union plan. The non-fire union employees saw a 7% increase, so that's the 6.5 that rolled over from the previous year, in addition to the 0.5% increase for that fiscal year. Any questions at this point? Fantastic.
Todd, could I note just a couple of things on that slide? Thank you. So first I want to say that these percentages that we're talking about are the rates, the insurance rates. And I know there's been some confusion about, the effect on an employee's paycheck. So I don't want anyone to get the impression that there was a 18.5% decrease in anyone's net pay or gross. These are the insurance rates that we're talking about with these percentages. The other thing that I wanted to just note was that the city and the governing body really recognized the financial hardships that employees were experiencing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. and took steps to, ensure that employees didn't experience additional hardship during that time. So I think that's reflected in this historical data. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. We'll can go to the following slide. We'll recap some of the financial history of the plan. If we can focus on columns A and B, that is the last 18 months of revenue and claims experience for the City of Santa Fe medical plan. Column A, you can see, is the first 6 months of this contract year, this fiscal year. So through December of 2023. So average subscribers you'll see is 1,134. That is the number of City of Santa Fe employees enrolled on the plan, a slight increase over the prior year. Then you'll see in row 3, the average members. So that includes both the City of Santa Fe employees plus any dependents that they also have enrolled in the plan. Spouses, domestic partners, children, stepchildren, etc. You can see that number actually decreased. So you probably have a higher number of employee onlys enrolling on the plan. Now for the financial information in row 7, the City of Santa Fe funding level, this is based on the per paycheck or per monthly tiered rates that are in place. By tiered rates, I mean employee only, employee plus spouse, family, etc. So that is the money that has gone into the health fund during the first 6 months of the year. That's 11.126 million. Or $727.81 per employee per month. So that includes both the city's share of the funding and the employee's share of the funding, which is deducted from their paycheck. You can see that increase is 2.4% over last year. That's just a blend of the 0.5% for the non-fire union employees. I'm sorry, the 0.5% for the fire union employees and the 7% for the non-fire union employees. So as a comparable to the 11.1 million in funding, in the first 6 months of the year in row 10, there has been a little less than $10 million in claims. Added to that are the fixed costs in row 11. So that is the amount the city pays to Cigna for administering the plans and for stop loss. So the City of Santa Fe has a stop loss policy at $250,000. What that means is for any employee or any member who incurs more than $250,000 during a fiscal year, the city will pay the first $250,000. Any amount above that will be paid by Cigna. So the limit of liability or the limit of risk for the city is capped for any individual member at $250,000 per year. So that plus the admin fee is a little less than 1.3 million. So year to date, you can see there's been 11.282 million in expenses, or in row 13, a shortfall of about 157,000 so far year to date. That amount is $738.07 per employee per month. That is an increase of 17.6% over the prior fiscal year. And the bottom row, row 16, is just the percentage above or below funding for that year. Column B, so last year was very helpful to the city's finances. If you go down to row 15, expenses actually decreased 5.1%. I think, as everyone is aware, healthcare costs are typically increasing at a rate that exceeds inflation. So for the city's costs to decrease that year it's something that does not happen often, and certainly something that we cannot bank on in the future. But that's why the 17.6% increase isn't terribly concerning, because if you compare that to years prior to fiscal year 2023, the city's increase in medical expenses has actually been below local and national medical trends for that period. It's a one-time blip, but it's a one-time blip because you have a lower starting point thanks to the positive claims experience last fiscal year. Additionally, fiscal year 2023, there were 3 months with 3 paychecks. So if you go to the next slide, please, it's a little bit easier to see. Thank you. In the bottom section of this slide, you'll see July, December, and June in column D. Were roughly $2.3 to $2.4 million in revenue. Again, that's because employees received 3 paychecks those months. So there were 3 inputs into the plan funding for that year. This year, there will only be 2, so that's about an $800,000 difference. So on the previous slide, there was about a $2.5 million surplus last fiscal year in the health fund. 800,000 of that was due to the fact that there were 3 paycheck months rather than 2. Otherwise, this is just a monthly representation of the summary seen on the previous slide. Next, for an employer group with roughly 1,000 employees enrolled on the medical plan, what you will find is that whether there's a surplus or deficit at year end is typically almost entirely driven by both the number and amount of what we call high-cost claimants. This page shows any claimants above 125,000 or half of that $250,000 stop loss policy that I mentioned previously. You can see on the left-hand side, year to date, there have been 6 claimants for a total of 1.1 million. Last year, and again, last year, there was a significant surplus in the medical plan. There were 9 claimants for $1.7 million. And only 1 claimant exceeded that $250,000 threshold. That's important because if you go to the following page, you'll see historically 1.7 million is far below what the city has historically averaged, both in number of claimants and amount of claimants. You can see for the previous 4 fiscal years prior to fiscal year 2023, the payments for high-cost claimants ranged anywhere from 2.1 million to almost twice that, about 4.1 million. So again, that's the other 2 reasons really behind last year's surplus. The 3 paycheck months and the historically low number of high-cost claimants. Moving forward, we expect that to move back toward the average and expect the city to see both a higher number and higher amount of high-cost claimants in the future. Next, I want to talk about where medical trends in terms of costs are headed in general. These are not specific to the city of Santa Fe, but they do reflect both what we expect to see nationally and locally. So in the past, as I mentioned, probably over the last 5 to 10 years, medical trends have averaged 5 to 6%. Those trends are increasing, as you'll see in this table. 2022 to 23, focus on the combined in the far right column. We expect about a 7% increase from year to year, and you'll see that increases by 0.5% pretty much for the foreseeable future. What is that driven by? A few things. Suppressed claims due to COVID. So these are claims for which medical care was not sought during COVID, and that they are now seeking treatment for those. Bullet points below: chronic conditions. Again, people were not treating their chronic conditions to the degree that they should have during the pandemic. So there's an increase both in prevalence and costs. Also, they were not receiving their preventive screenings during COVID. So we've seen an uptick, for example, in the number of cancers, and both an uptick in the number and the severity of those cancer patients. Secondly, I think we're all aware economy-wide inflation has skyrocketed over the last couple of years. Thankfully, there's somewhat of a buffer for medical inflation, and that, as you'll see in the bullet points, typically carriers, in this case Cigna, the reimbursements that they negotiate with the providers, the doctors, the hospitals, et cetera, are typically 2 to 4 years. So there's not a one-time hit. Those are spread out. But we do expect, as Cigna renegotiates their contracts with the providers, those to increase. The healthcare sector saw unprecedented hiring post-pandemic, and hiring at salaries that were significantly higher than pre-pandemic. Lastly, mental health and substance abuse services during the pandemic skyrocketed. Those have not been reduced post-pandemic. That's not necessarily a bad thing. In the United States, mental health and substance abuse are typically well undertreated for the number of cases for mental health. And not only that, but mental health affects physical health. That has definitely been, that's been shown. So increasing mental health services and access to those services, which is certainly troubling in New Mexico, should in the long run have a lowering effect of physical health care costs. Next slide. So medical trends in its simplest form is derived from two components: utilization and price. As I mentioned from the previous slide, what you'll see here is price is by far the main driver of costs. So price is the price per service. Utilization is the number of services. You can see on the medical side, it accounts for about 90% of trend and about 80% on pharmacy. So that's not that people are seeking more treatments, it's that the treatments that they seek and the drugs from the pharmaceutical companies are more expensive. And we expect that to continue in the near future. Next, we want to talk about the increase in premiums to the City of Santa Fe plan for fiscal year 2025. Top left-hand section of this, so it's a 6.8% overall increase. That is the increase to both the City of Santa Fe and to the City of Santa Fe employees. That is $111 per employee per month, $1.5 million annually based on current enrollment. Again, that $1.5 million is both the city input into the health fund and the employee input. So it's roughly split at about $1.1 million to the city, and about $400,000 will be contributed by the employees through their paycheck contributions. Trend we've already talked about. Top right-hand section, key observations. So this increase of 6.8% is actually lower than what we've seen both locally and nationally. bottom left-hand section, that's hovered around 7.5 to 8%. So the city's expected increase is actually a little bit below average trends. Carrier renewals, so this is both the administrative fee and the stop-loss premiums paid to Cigna are better than average locally and nationally. As I mentioned, high-cost claimants continue to be a driver. As Mr. Valdez described for the methodology section, essentially what we do is take the last 12 months of data, subtract from that any high-cost claimants for which the city would be reimbursed under the stop-loss policy, trend that forward, come up with an expected cost for the upcoming fiscal year. And the final slide, I apologize, this is,
Todd, I'm sorry if I could
go.
interject there. I just wanted to reiterate that that 6.8% doesn't mean that the employees would see a decrease in their net pay of 6.8%. That 6.8% is the overall rate for the insurance.
correct, and that's an excellent segue to the final slide. What we want to show here is what the impact of that 6.8% increase would be to the employee paychecks, both biweekly and annually. The top section is the premium plan. This is the plan, as Mr. Valdez stated, that on which 92% of the city employees are enrolled. The top left-hand section is the, let's just call it non-fire union plan. The top right section in red is the fire union plan. Currently, on the far left-hand side, an employee would contribute, if they were covering just themselves, $104.29 per paycheck. That would increase to $111.38 per paycheck, or about $7.09 per paycheck, $184 a year. So again, this is based on the medical premium. This is not a 6.8%, increase or deduction from the employee's salary. That could go as high as, if you look at the employee plus family, so if an employee covers a spouse and dependents, they are currently paying $249 per paycheck. That would increase to $266 per paycheck, about $17 a check, or $440 per year. Similar results for the fire union plan on the right-hand side. Lastly, if $111 per paycheck is too onerous for an employee and they feel that it's too high, the city does offer two additional plans ranging from, in the green section, $106 per plan for the core benefits, all the way down to $82 per plan for the HRA benefits. So that these plans, they do have a deductible, they do have co-insurance, converse to what I said on that first slide. But if there's a need to save some money in terms of paycheck contribution, they do have options. Just as right now, 92% of the employees choose that richest benefit plan, the premium plan. There's one more slide, but Mr. Valdez did a fantastic job of describing the wellness programs. These initiatives should create a healthier workforce moving forward and should impact healthcare costs in the future. It's not something that directly impacts costs in the upcoming fiscal year, but over time, given these programs and participation in these programs, we'd expect to see that slow the medical trend increase over time. Any questions? I know I've thrown a lot at you and
Could I interject
Shortish
on
period
one
of
more
time.
point before we go to questions? Just wanted to reiterate that the city pays the majority of the premium for employees, about 70%, and then the employee pays the remainder. But the city absorbs the bulk of the increase when we have one, and also just maintaining the current level of benefit. The city pays the vast majority, 76% of the cost.
Counselor Cassett?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for being here and for the presentation and the detail. I do have a question around the projection that, and maybe I'm misreading the slide. If we could please go to sorry, here we go. It's going to be slide 7 of the packet.
7 of 19.
Oh, page 7 of the presentation, yes, which would also be the, I think this is it. Hold on. So oh, yeah, so it's looking at the historical large claims. And we've had a downward trend since fiscal year 20 into fiscal year 22, and it looks like that might continue for 23 and 24. I'm curious why we're expecting it to go up. And you know, it's, if you actually take out fiscal years 20 and 21, which of course were going to be abnormal due to the pandemic, we do still see that trend if we're looking from fiscal year 19, skipping pandemic years into 22, 23, and 24. So curious why we don't think that's a trend that would continue, especially given a lot of the wellness activities that we have put into place to try to do some of the preventative work.
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett. So in these prior years' claims, high-cost claimants were actually suppressed during, for you all, that would be fiscal years 20, 21, and 22. So despite the fact that those years are higher, both in terms of number and amount of claims, we would have, if there weren't a pandemic, we would have expected those to be even higher, as people would have sought more care than they did. We're expecting higher moving forward, both in terms of, so this fiscal year, we are already at 1.1 million in high-cost claimants as compared to 1.7 for the entire fiscal year last year. As the fiscal year continues, we will see that number increase. You can't expect that to just double. There are going to be more who hit that 125,000 as they incur claims throughout the year. So the expectation for this year would probably be in the $2.5 to $3 million range.
Mhm.
That is due to, despite the fact that the city saw higher cost claims during the pandemic, we know there was a suppression of claims. We've seen cancer patients with a higher level of severity, they're stage 3 and 4 rather than 1 and 2 if they had gotten their screenings in 2021, 22. That is starting to kick in now.
Okay.
We certainly expect, fortunately, knock on wood, that has not been the city's case, but I've seen with other clients in New Mexico, they have seen a huge increase in the number and the amount of those patients due to the severity level of those conditions, which may not have happened had they gotten their screening during the pandemic.
Okay.
Well, we kind of expected it like immediately when the pandemic ended, but we found that it's taking a little bit longer than we initially expected.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope it doesn't.
Right, be nice if it,
The expectation is that it
time for
will,
that.
if the city follows other clients within the state.
Okay. And I think my next question is probably for Director Salazar, or maybe for Mr. Valdez. So if I am understanding correctly, we're looking at a 6.8% across all plans increase.
Madam Chair, Counselor Cassett, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So we've had this conversation a couple of years in a row. I'm curious about the involvement of the Benefits Advisory Committee and the conversations. If they have occurred, I have, or that they have not. And I know that there is often, the conversation around, hey, we can keep the same plan. And it's going to increase this much, or not, and make changes, but just having them be able to have that conversation. And I'm curious why at this juncture, it sounds like that conversation has not happened with them as this is coming forward to us now.
Madam Chair, Counselor Cassett, the meeting with the Benefits Advisory Committee based on the information for the renewal rates is going to happen on Wednesday.
Okay.
So we usually get these rates end of February. Thanks to Todd, we got them a little earlier this year. So as soon as we get it, we want to make a presentation to the Finance Committee as an annual process, also to inform you all of how the plan is doing. And then shortly thereafter, a couple days after, we meet with the Benefits Advisory Committee. We do meet with them. We try to meet with them at least quarterly. The last couple of quarters, we didn't have anyone show up. But certainly we wouldn't have had these numbers the previous quarters. So typically we see a decrease in participation after the budget is approved, but it really kind of ramps up once we get the renewal numbers, which is now in February, early March. And then we will have several meetings with them to do exactly what you just described, to go over this presentation and then determine if they essentially would like to make any plan design changes to offset the cost.
Okay, wonderful. Good. I'm glad to hear that that process is kicking off this week. So thank you for that. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Garcia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to refer to the presentation on page 4. And I just kind of noted the dates. I think you referred to the column A and column B. And so for data, column B looks like it's going from 7 of 22 to 6 of 23. Column A goes from 7 of 23 to the end of the year, December. So I know that we don't have any more data in 24, but I guess going forward to compare things a little bit easier, I mean, this is a 12-month period versus a 6-month period. And so I guess I just wanted to point that out because I was looking at the numbers and they just didn't seem to be following each other. And so I kind of wanted to point that out, but in regards to the data that's been presented, do we feel it's going to be kind of consistent for the next 6 months to somewhat equal, other than the 6.8% that we're looking at?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, typically what happens is during the final 6 months of the year, costs are slightly higher than they were the first 6 months of the year. Members and employees have, well, in your case, it's a little bit muted. Typically, they will have met their deductible, any out-of-pocket maxes, and you'll see a slight increase throughout the year. As most of your employees are on a plan with only co-pays, it's not quite as drastic if you did have deductibles and co-insurance, the costs in the second half of the year are typically 5 to 10% higher than the first half of the year. In the city of Santa Fe's case, I would expect something in very low single-digit percentages. But in all cases, the second half of the year typically exceeds the first half of the year. I'm gonna sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but that all comes down to what you see on page 6, the high-cost claimants. I mean, any $200,000 claimant, which are not rare, unfortunately, anymore, is going to, that is, trying to do math in my head now, 1% increase to the entire City of Santa Fe plan. So that page is pretty much the most influential driver on the healthcare plan. Just the number and amount of things. You do have some protection at $250,000 from Cigna. But again, just one $250,000 claim is a 1% increase to the overall results of the health.
Thank you for that explanation. The only other question I have, I guess, this would be for Director Salazar is, given that you have not been able to meet with the Benefits Committee and will be doing so here shortly, before anything comes to the governing body or even finance again, be great to see, what their input is and how, you know, how this is all working out in regards to collaborating with them. And what do you foresee is that, you know, coming forth from that committee?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, I think we have several committee meetings once we have these final numbers. And so tonight, as Mr. Valdez mentioned, it's informational and to receive any feedback or answer any questions. But certainly through the budget process, we could inform the full governing body of the results from the discussions with the Benefits Advisory Committee, and then make a recommendation accordingly in tangent with the budget process for FY25. If you'd like to see something different or you have different feedback, please let me know.
Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Counselor Romero Worth, do you have any questions?
I'm good, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay. On page 7 and 19 in the packet, I find it just absolutely uncanny that those numbers are within percent of each other year over year when we're talking about 17 and $18 million. I mean, do you statistically see this with other clients that they run so close?
Madam Chair, that the percent of total costs, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, the total claims, I mean, from 1 year to the next, we're talking about 17,600,000. The next year it's 17,800,000. Those are close numbers.
Madam Chair, what you would typically see is a trend increase, which in the past has been 5%. 5% of 18 million is 700,000. So to see those.
Yeah, and on
And
the
that-
bottom one, we have a 1.5% instead of 5%.
And Madam Chair, what this doesn't show is there was a decrease in enrollment during that time period too, which offsets some of the global cost increases you would have seen. For years, the city of Santa Fe's plan had about 1,200 to 1,250 enrolled. During the pandemic and post-pandemic, that's been closer to 1,100. So the fewer employees offset some of that medical trend increase we would have expected to see. And I think just coincidentally, There was about the same decrease in enrollment that we would have seen increase in claims. And that's part of the reason we calculate everything on a per member or per employee basis, is so that those shifts in enrollment don't sway the overall projection.
So let me ask you how other entities do, because I think that, Director, you said the city pays what percent?
Madam Chair, 76.5% of the rate per member.
Okay, so in other entities that you deal with, the, for the single payer, and then when they have the employee and the spouse, it's just about double, correct? Approximately.
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Other places, other enterprises, do they extend the same amount of payment on the spouse's benefit that they do on the employee's benefit?
Madam Chair, typically in the private sector, I would see the employer contributing a lower percentage toward the dependents, any spouses and children. In the public sector in New Mexico, it's typically a fixed percent. For example, the state, it's either 60, 70, or 80% based on your salary of any of those tiers, regardless of whether it's employee only, employee spouse, employee children, or family. They will pay that flat 60%. But in the private sector, that is much less common, and it's typical to see them pay a lower percentage of the non-employee share.
So in other public entities, did I hear you say that over a certain salary range, that the employee pays a little bigger percentage of their healthcare costs?
Madam Chair, in New Mexico, I shouldn't say most. Some public sector entities have a sliding scale based on salary. So for example, for the state, most employees pay 40% of the premium as compared to the city of Santa Fe, where they pay 23.5%.
Right, is there a change up after a certain salary level?
Madam Chair, it changed. I'm not sure what you mean by.
Well, does the person that makes 100,000 pay the same amount, same percentage for their medical insurance as a person that makes 200,000?
Madam Chair, for the state, I believe the bands are, I know the top band is above 60,000. So any employee making above 60,000 would pay 40% of the premium. I believe the middle band is 50 to 60,000. They pay 30% of the premium. Anyone below 50,000 would pay 20% of the premium.
Okay. I'm not suggesting it so that no one runs with this, and I read about it or get phone calls about it. I'm just pointing out that in the past, we've been faced with some tough decisions, and I don't think that we've had those kinds of considerations on the table. But should we be faced with tough decisions, I think that we should take a look and consider everything. I mean, last time that we were in a pretty tight spot, we pulled back chiropractic, massage, neuropathy. We looked at number of visits and that type of thing. We tightened our belt a little bit there. We never discussed the different pay bands and extension of benefit percentages to spouses or families. So I'm just saying that at one point in time, we were facing a pretty sizable deficit. Doesn't appear that we're there right now, but I think that we should keep it in mind for the future, that we look at everything and not just one thing. So I don't have anything else. Counselor Romero Worth, nothing?
I'm good, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the report. And Director, I think we can move on.
Great. Thank you so much for being here and thank you for that information. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation on the operating budget process overview and the FY24 mid-year budget. And we are very fortunate to have our budget officer, Andy Hopkins, here with us. We also have our assistant finance director and our principal budget analyst in the back, Alexis Lotero and Anita Medina. And Andy's joining us here at the podium. So we wanted to start by giving the committee an overview of the budget process as we're beginning it for FY25, and then talk a little bit about how FY24 is shaping up year to date for the first half of the fiscal year. So actually not year to date, but for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. So Andy's going to take us through that. You want me to share it on this? Oh, no.
Here we go. Forgive me for sitting down during this presentation. I'm kind of the walking wounded today. So,
You okay, Andy?
yeah, I just have a bad back brought on by a cold, so
I'm sorry.
not feeling great. But anyway, hey, at least you can rest assured that your budget team is dedicated, including the director. So
No, that.
if that's any indication to you. So as Emily said, we'll start off with a little overview of the operating budget process. We kick it off generally in December when budget staff meet with our contracted economist Riley White from UNM to discuss revenue projections for the upcoming fiscal year. Then in early January, we create the budget templates that are distributed to departments incorporating the mid-year budget for the current year, which is what we call the base budget. They're essentially their basis for the upcoming budget year. Then later in January, this year was the 26th, departments will submit their budget templates with their requests to the budget office for initial reviews. During February, what we're doing right now, we are compiling and reviewing budget submittals. And then concurrently with that, the mayor and finance leadership will be meeting with counselors to solicit budget input for policy priorities. I believe those invites have started to go out today, so you should be seeing them soon if you have not already. In March, we will kick off our meetings with departments, mayor, and the city manager to discuss budget requests. We are actually kicking off some of those now, but as we are able to get time with the mayor and the city manager, we will be doing that. Then in late March, early April, the budget book is finalized and prepared for finance committee reviews. In April, we will have those review hearings with the finance committee. In May, the final hearings and adoption of the budget will happen in front of the governing body. Then a couple other dates of note, June 1st, the final budget for FY25 will be due to the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration. And on July 1st, the new fiscal year will begin. Just to talk briefly about the expenditure budget process. Departments submit their budget requests, budget staff meet with them to evaluate the requests, review the personnel budget, and discuss outstanding issues. I believe we are drawing to a close with those meetings now. We've had very productive meetings with department heads and other representatives. Reorganizations that have not previously been submitted are developed and implemented for integration into the new fiscal year's budget during this time. One very important date that we've been highlighting for all the departments, we have a March 8th deadline for any salary changes or reclassifications of personnel in order to allow for, finalization of the personnel budget. Standard personnel actions such as hire of vacancies at the standard budgeted rate will proceed as normal, but on March 8th, we have to have a cutoff for any substantial changes to salaries on positions, just so we don't have a moving target when we're going into the review process. In addition, in March, the Budget Office will compile assessments for general fund services such as human resources, finance, and facilities. Also, assessments for fleet services, ITT services, risk insurance costs, and benefits administration costs. Once we finalize the Budget Office integrates the budget information into the budget book for review by Finance Committee and the governing body. On the revenue side, as mentioned before, we meet and budget staff meet with at the economist Riley White to formulate overall revenue projections based on local, regional, and national economic trends. Later, budget staff meet with departments to refine the revenue budget, which again, we have just nearly completed that process. The revenue budget may be further refined in meetings with the revenue budget will be further refined in meetings with departments, city manager, and the mayor. Late in the process, budget staff evaluate the overall budget and make adjustments to balance fund expenditures against available revenue. Part of that process is many of you will recall seeing transfers of other funds fluctuating quite a bit in the budget. That's a large part of that transfers budget, is making sure that everything's balanced. Leading to my next bullet, budget staff also include transfers to subsidized funds that are not self-supporting, including but not limited to the Southside Library, the Municipal Recreation Complex and Golf Course, and the Genevieve Chavez Community Center. Final review and adoption. The Finance Committee will review the budget for each department during review hearings in April. Those times to be determined. Budget staff will attend all such hearings to answer questions and provide any other information requested by committee members. Just the general outline, the mayor proposes the budget, and the Finance Committee has the authority to propose amendments to the budget for final governing body consideration as they see fit. Once the Finance Committee has proposed a budget for governing body consideration, the governing body holds hearings on the budget and proposes any desired amendments to the budget. The hearings also include opportunities for the city's unions and members of the public to weigh in on the budget and community priorities. Then finally, just to briefly mention some upcoming innovations that the Budget Office has in the pipeline. We are going through the process now of purchase and implementation of Questica budgeting software to more effectively develop and manage the city's budget. Upon evaluation of several budget tools, we have found that most entities find Questica the most robust and powerful and will help us, you know, enhance our budget process further, both during the budget development season and during the rest of the year. We will also be working, as soon as we're done with the operating budget, we will be pivoting toward implementation of a new capital budgeting process and working on recurring revenue sources to maintain that capital budget. So before I move on to the current mid-year budget, are there any questions from the committee?
Counselor?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really excited to hear about the capital budget process and looking forward to learning about that more. I think this is more a question that you all may not have an answer to now. But I know that when we are looking to potentially make a change to the budget, there's a lot of conversation about identifying, you know, the revenue source. We have to have a balanced budget, so we may have to be cutting from something else. Obviously, we need support to do that. We do not have the phenomenal skills you have in any way, shape, or form. But I am curious what that process needs to look like for you all. What type of requests do you need? How would you want us to work with you in the event that we are looking to make a change? And if you don't have an answer for this now, we have until April for budget hearings. So I just wanted to put that out so that it is something that we can be thinking about in advance and not get there in April and not quite know what that process would look like. So maybe it's a little bit more of a stretch. Thank you.
Thank you, counselors. And I noticed that Counselor Romero Worth has her hand up. I'm not sure if it's on that same point.
Counselor Romero Worth?
Actually, it was on a different point, but it is a good question. We have had a process, I believe the last 2 budget cycles, about how we amend. And as I think you state, Counselor Cassett, the budget does have to be balanced. So and I believe there's a resolution on this topic that Counselor Lindell I think is familiar with, in terms of, you know, we've got to identify where you're taking the money from. And so I think on the front end, it's going to be very important that, you know, these conversations with the mayor and the city manager about budget priorities are attended and taken seriously, which I imagine they will be. But with a recognition that, you know, we have, you know, only so much money and a lot of priorities. And so, you know, figuring out major shifts is probably going to be challenging, is I guess all I'd say. But I do have another point to make when it's my turn, Madam Chair.
Care to go ahead?
I just wanted to point out to the committee that this Questica software, which I believe our Assistant Finance Director, Alexis Lutero, has researched and identified as something that would be helpful for the city, I think is going to be a really important tool for the Finance Committee in terms of the thing I've been really anxious and excited to do, which is looking regularly at budget to actuals, so that we can see more clearly and with greater detail how the budget is coming along in terms of as the year progresses, and you know, where are we spending money, where aren't we spending money, why. It'll just help us dial in more clearly. And so I'm excited about this software. I'm excited about the software for the committee because I think it'll help us do our oversight work, and something I've been waiting for, you know, once we get that final audit done and we have this budgeting software in place. I think this is going to be a great tool for us as a committee. So just wanted to highlight that for all of you and note that it's something that I find very exciting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor.
Madam Chair, I think Andy had a response to my question.
Pardon me? Yeah, Mr. Hopkins.
Madam Chair, Counselor, I just had a general comment for the Finance Committee. I would I understand that there was some frustrations with the amendment process last year. If I could offer, you know, a potential solution to that, I would encourage committee members in whatever way that they feel comfortable to work not only with the mayor, the manager, the city manager, and the finance director, but directly with the budget team. We have an outstanding depth of knowledge on the budget. We know what can be done and how to get things done in a way that, you know, I know the amendments process felt like it was stymied in the past because, you know, the mechanics weren't necessarily worked out. And that is our job. Myself, Anita, Christopher, who you met before, we're still bringing him on board, but you know, this is our forte. This is what we know. You know, I've been doing budgets for the city for 22 years, so I do know quite a bit about, you know, not to toot my own horn or anything, but I do know quite a bit about how, you know, things can be accomplished that, you know, the point is to get what you want out of the budget, out of it, not to focus on the minutia. That's where budget can really be a resource for you if you're, you know, willing to, you know, reach out to us with questions, with, you know, discussions. We will, you know, no matter how busy we are, we will always make time for you, whether you're on the finance committee or not. For those who may be listening, who are not on the finance committee, we, you know, we have never turned away a counselor yet, and we will never do so. So I hope you will avail yourself of that knowledge that we have, our expertise.
Thank you, Andy. Really, really do appreciate that very much. I know that sometimes we do hesitate knowing how busy you are in that season, but I really appreciate that. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah, even if it's after hours, we will always make time for you, you know. If we have something going on, we might have to reschedule, you know, pick a time that works for you, but we will never say no. You know, I will never say no. If you come to me with an information request, how do I get this done? Is there a way of getting to the point where we want to see, you know, maybe the point from A to B goes through C, but, you know, we can, you know, if there's a way to do it, you know, we will certainly give you all the assistance we can. We will spend as much time with you as you like, talking about solutions. And, you know, I think that's, as you said, there has been some hesitancy for governing body members to work directly with budget, and I would really just encourage you to, you know, I mean, of course, we still have a chain of command. I'm not saying we go outside the chain of command, but you know, certainly for information, resources, for ideas, we are more than happy to be a resource.
Thank you.
So if there are no more questions, I'll pivot to the FY24 mid-year budget outlook. And let me just bring up this page. You will see, okay, let me just bring this up here. And I will go over this sheet in a little bit more detail. You will also see these sheets in your packet. I won't go over them as much detail. They are essentially presenting the same information, although these ones that say Affordable Housing Department at the front, Arts and Culture Department, provide a bit more detail. Many of you will recognize these pages from the budget book. They are in slightly in a different format here, rather than focusing on this budget versus the prior year actuals. This presentation is more focused on the prior year's actual, 1 year actual, the adopted budget versus the mid-year budget, and the year-to-date encumbrances and expenses. So it's presenting slightly different information, but in the same format. We created this presentation for the budget book about, I think, 20 years ago, and it's always been one of the most helpful bits of the budget because it really gets you a bit down into the details without getting you lost in the weeds. So I'd encourage you all to look at that. And of course, if you have any questions about that, certainly either during this meeting or later, you can always get a hold of us. This page, the one that I am going to spend just a small amount of time on, presents basically the same information, but in a consolidated one-page format, breaking it down by category of taxes, fees, grants. Then on the expenditure side, salaries, benefits, contractual services, so on and so forth. Just highlight on this, you will see in the columns where it says dollar change and percent change adopted versus mid-year budget. You can see that on the revenue side, since the beginning of the fiscal year, we have added about $50.5 million to the revenue budget, or 12.1%. That is largely in the form of, almost exclusively in the form of carry forward of grant revenues to bring them into the current fiscal year from the prior year, to account for the fact that the grant terms do not always coincide with our fiscal year, and there is often some bleed over into the next year before the grant is expended and closed. You will notice the number is a bit higher on the expenditure side, 92.4 million, or 22%. A sizable portion of that is, of course, carry forward as well, not only for grants, but for other ongoing initiatives. There has been a sizable amount added to the budget this year from prior year gross receipts tax revenues as well, some of which is recurring money for new positions and other recurring costs. In the general fund, which is where it's you know, the perhaps the highest sensitivity in the financial picture, we have added approximately $5.5 million in recurring costs to the current general fund budget. In our revenue outlook with GRT, we're looking at approximately $8 million of increase from the adopted budget numbers to next year's. So just to highlight that of that $8 million, all but approximately 2.5% of that has already been spent effectively in the new budget, in the new FY25 budget. So that does put quite a bit of pressure on the budget, particularly in light of the fact that we have several items that we know are going to be putting a great deal of additional pressure on the budget, such as health insurance, as the previous presentation just showed you. We are also looking at probably significant increases in our other insurances, our general liability, our fleet and physical damage, our buildings coverage. Those costs are going up industry-wide, and they will put considerable pressure on the budget, not only the general fund budget. Also, many of you know we have class and comp coming up. We are currently looking at a phased approach to that, but even with a phased approach, there will still be quite a significant cost. And also, one of the things that's been being discussed around the budget is the possibility of a cost of living increase. That, of course, will also put substantial pressure on the budget. So I just want to kind of put out there that much as we would like to be able to fund a lot of proposals and initiatives from departments, our room to do so will be significantly limited by these circumstances for the upcoming budget year. So I just want to right now put out there, that much as we know that we have many good ideas coming from both the counselors and from departments, just keep in mind our ability to fund them may not be nearly as great as the desire.
I think that that's not news to us, Andy.
it just it bears mention, you know.
I appreciate that. I'll just, did you want to say more about this?
That's all that I have. I'm willing to stand for questions or comments or whatever you guys like.
Okay, we've lost a couple of our committee members here. I'll just make note, that we did pass in 2016 a resolution, numbered 2016-88, and I'll just read the title. It's a resolution amending the financial policies of the governing body to require that the creation of new or the expansion of existing programs and services identify a funding source or an equivalent offset to provide funding for such new or expanded programs or service. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind. The way that came about in 2016, Mayor Gonzalez and I did that because we saw people bringing forth wishes and desires that cost money and making requests of staff that staff couldn't possibly do. It was a matter of, here's my request, this is what I want, go find the money for it. And it was highly unfair to staff. So that's why we passed that. And I think that, you know, maybe we're gonna need to send a copy of that around to all counselors as we approach the budget season, because it's worth taking note and knowing why we did that. So you want, if you want a new program or you want an expansion, that's terrific. Where's the money going to come from, and what are you proposing that we give up? So that's resolution 2016-88.
Madam Chair,
Councilor Romero Worth.
I'm sorry, when you're finished.
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the resolution number, which is the point I was trying to make earlier, which is we have to identify, the budget has to, by state law, be balanced. If we want to add something, we have to know, you know, the budget will come to us as the mayor's recommendation of what we do with the situation we have and priorities. And again, it's why I think it's really important for counselors to take those meetings and to, you know, try to get things built into the budget to the best that they can. Again, we may not be able to do everything that we'd like to do. The budget process is a way to prioritize. But I think, you know, I really appreciate Andy's offer to counselors, you know, to come visit with him. I think he is a wealth of information. I think we all could take advantage of that information in terms of better understanding kind of what the parameters are, what's the push and pull, what are again some of the increased costs that we're seeing that we're going to have to address. And yeah, so just want to emphasize that I think we have a chance to influence this budget with these meetings. And I think there's an amendment process, but as you note, we have to be able to say what we're going to take away in order to fund what we need. And then, of course, the governing body would have to agree with whatever the amendment was in order for it to happen. So anyway, I think, you know, this process is continuing to evolve. I'm excited about that. I think there are changes that we can make. And we just thank you for the time, Madam Chair, and thank you, Andy, for your willingness to help and the presentation.
Thank you, Counselor. I think that concludes that item. Director?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, counselors. Thank you so much to Andy and the budget team for preparing this presentation. As I know you can all see, we have a very dedicated, very committed, and very knowledgeable budget team. And I'm really grateful. I think we're very lucky to have this team. And I'm also going to be a little bit protective of them. And I think Councilors Lindell and Romero Worth made some really good points. That, you know, some of these decisions that we'll have to make as part of the budget process are going to be very difficult, and they're going to involve trade-offs, and we're not going to have enough money to do everything that we want and need to do. No matter how much money we have, it will never fully fund every need and every priority of the city. So there will always be tough decisions. And I know that the budget staff has a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of experience to offer about how we can meet certain objectives, but asking the budget team to find the solutions for us is not appropriate, in my opinion. That's part of my job, to advise you and to work with the budget team to help develop solutions. So, you know, we are starting to, like we've discussed, develop the budget. And as one of the very early steps this year, we're going to be meeting with each counselor one-on-one. Those invites went out this afternoon, and the meetings are scheduled for later this week and early next week. So we can talk with you, with myself, Alexis, and Andy, to understand your priorities and your policy interests for FY25. Now, as part of that process, we will, you know, remind everyone that we will not be able to fund every priority that's identified by every counselor. In truth, there'll probably be a lot of really great ideas that we can't fund for this budget cycle. And that's really difficult. But we'll work together to incorporate input and try to put forth the best budget that we can. And just one more note on that. We did develop an amendment process. Andy mentioned it a little bit. We'll continue to fine tune that for this budget cycle, but we did develop an effective budget amendment process that we put in place last year. And so I plan to continue that going forward. So once we have the budget proposal and we start having budget hearings, we'll use that amendment process similar to what we use for bills and resolutions for counselors to propose changes to that process. So we can certainly flesh that out more and look for opportunities for improvement. But I do think that it's very important that we document those decisions through that amendment process and show, you know, we're shifting from the original proposal, we're shifting funds from one area to another, we're moving positions. And I think that amendment process did work well last year.
Madam Chair, can I just make a clarification to my question? I do agree that the written part of the amendment process, I think my question was more for, because we often do need assistance, how do we best work with you? Which is why I said you may not know now. But in terms of that amendment process and the documentation and how that went through, I didn't see any challenges there. It was more in the information gathering, solution finding realm of what's going to work best for the budget department and the finance department at large. So just wanted to make sure I had that clarification was in there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair and Councillor Cassidy. And we are fortunate to have a wealth of knowledge in our budget team to help develop those solutions. I think having these meetings early in the process this year to understand priorities will really help. So even as Councillor Romero Worth mentioned, you know, trying to get them as many ideas as we can incorporated into the budget from the get-go, I think will be a really good change that we're making for this budget cycle.
Thank you, Director. Andy, thanks for being here tonight. I hope you feel better. And I'm sorry you're struggling with back pain, believe me. Moving on, we are to audit update and overview. Director Oster.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the Finance Committee. I am pleased to report that we are moving forward with the FY23 audit. I'm feeling very good about where we are in the process. The auditors are currently working on substantive procedures, which involves pulling samples. There's a lot of back and forth as we move through the iterative process of the auditors selecting their samples and the city team pulling supporting documentation, answering questions, and, just continuing through the audit process. Madam Chair, with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions. And real quickly before that, I just want to say thank you again to the budget team for being here tonight and for providing us with that very helpful and informative presentation.
Very much appreciated. Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, let's move on. Item B, Counselor Garcia, you pulled this. You want to address it? Do you have questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I basically pulled this and I apologize. I could have brought this at Public Works, brought you to Finance tonight. But in regards to the $300,000, as I was reading through the documentation, there's a remand date.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Can we read this into the record for anybody who might be listening?
Certainly, I'm happy to do that. Okay. So item 6B, which was removed from consent and is now on the discussion agenda, is a request for the approval of a capital appropriation project agreement with the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration Local Government Division for the planning, design, and construction of Tierra Contenta Rail Extension in the total amount of $300,000 through June 30th of 2025. And there is also an accompanying budget adjustment resolution in the amount of $300,000 to budget the funds in Fund 892 Streets Capital Improvement Project in the Public Works Department. And I would just note that this is the last grant agreement from the state for our 2021 legislative capital appropriations.
Thank you, Director. So as I was stating, there's a reversion date of June 30th, 2025, and it's on page 4 of 13. That's the supporting documentation. And so I know that I think this is already a project ready to go, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and Councilor Garcia. That's correct. The project is deep into design, almost completed design and very close to construction. It's a $2.2 million project. The memo speaks about the scope of the project, and it is expected to go into construction this year.
So in regards to the additional funding here that we're bringing in, is our overall project, being that it's been somewhat delayed, because I followed the process when I first was on governing body. And in regards to the contractors, are we on target with total costs? Are there going to be additional funding that we're going to need to be looking at? Things of that nature.
Thank you so much for the question. You never know until you get the final bid for construction. These days it changes minute to minute. We do have a good capital stack for the project, as we always do, compile the money that we believe we'll need. But it has not been awarded for construction yet. And so that will be the proof in the pudding. But we do feel as if we are funded to the full probable cost estimate for the project.
Okay. And the June 30th, 2025 looks to be what's said in this document as it'll terminate on June 30th. Are we confident that we're going to be moving along with the project before this date?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia. If we still need a little bit of time, we can certainly ask for a extension on that at the legislative session next year. We did it with a couple of projects, like for instance, we have $800,000 to remodel the new homeless housing hotel, and that's been stalled for a little bit. But we'll get to it as soon as we're able to start construction on that. So we just monitor really closely the progress of the projects, keep them moving as fast as we can, and then make appropriate adjustments as necessary to the funding agreements.
Thank you. No other questions. I think that this is definitely a really important project for our district in regards to connecting, the walking trail or the bike trail there from Tierra Contenta all the way through to Sweeney or to South Meadows. And I think that's going to be very important for our district. And I'd like to see this move forward quickly as possible. Thank you so much. With that, I'll move to approve.
Second?
Counselor Romero Worth, I see your hand. After
Thank-
Counselor Cassett pointed it out to me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think there's some good news on this in terms of the administrative costs, that perhaps Director, Oster could speak to.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Romero Worth and members of the Finance Committee. So I received communication from North Central Economic Development District indicating that they are going to lower their fiscal agent fee from 3% to 1%. So we were already drafting an amendment to the fiscal agent agreement that will add the 22 additional projects from 2022 and 2023 legislative sessions. And we are also incorporating into that amendment the decrease in the fee. So we're really grateful to North Central for their willingness to do that. And I think they're going to be an excellent partner as we deploy this capital outlay funding to meet really critical needs in our community.
And Madam Chair, I would just add, I believe that'll be coming to us soon, correct?
Madam Chair and Councilor Romero, that's correct. We did have the amendment drafted and then we took it back to add the change to the fiscal agent fee. So my goal is to have it before you in the next cycle. So in about 2 weeks, 2 weeks from Wednesday.
You done, Counselor?
That's all I got. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, that's wonderful news about the 2% difference in fee. That's terrific. So we have a motion and a second. Any other conversation? We have to have a roll call, please.
Certainly. Councilor Cassett,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
Councilor Faulkner,
Yes.
Councilor Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes, sorry.
Motion passes.
Okay, moving on to item D. If you would read that into the record, and Councilor Romero Worth hold this, so once it's read into the record, please proceed.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you, members of the Finance Committee. Item 6D is a request for approval of a budget amendment resolution, BAR, to increase the budget for FY 2024 for audit preparation and accounting consulting in the total amount of $375,000. And this item is mine. I am presenting this for your consideration tonight. I would like to give a little bit of background about the purpose of this budget adjustment. I would like to first note that it's not a contract amendment, it's just adding funding. We didn't budget the full amount of the contract for Clifton Larson Allen. We did an increase, you may recall, back in October to bring funding forward from FY 23 that had been budgeted for accounting, consulting, and audit preparation support. And then this is an additional amount that we're requesting to add to the contract for Clifton Larson Allen. As you're all aware, the number one priority of the Finance Department is to get the city caught up on annual financial statement and compliance audits, and we're making excellent progress on that. The FY 21 audit was submitted to the state auditor at the end of June, released to the public at the end of July, and then just recently, the FY 22 audit was submitted in the beginning of December to the state auditor and released to the public a couple of weeks ago on January 18th. So Clifton Larson Allen is assisting us in completing these audits. In the current timeframe, we're working on the FY 23 audit, which is in process. I just gave an update earlier tonight about that. Our timeline for submitting to the state auditor's office is May 15th of 2024. At the same time, the department is preparing for the audit of FY 2024, which is back on cycle, is how I would describe it. And that will help us meet the regulatory deadline of December 15th for the FY 24 audit. So the accelerated pace of completing 3 audits in a single fiscal year wouldn't be possible without the support of our audit preparation and accounting consulting team. They really have been instrumental in completing multiple audits during FY 24. And I'm happy to say that we're shifting for FY 24 from a model where Clifton Larson Allen is doing a substantial amount of the work to a model where they're preparing process documentation, providing training, and assisting city staff in learning how to perform the work ourselves. Now, that being said, we still don't have enough staff in the finance department. We still have key vacancies across the board in many accounting positions that we're working on filling. And so until we're fully staffed, until we get those vacancies filled with city staff members, the partnership that we've developed with Clifton Larson Allen is really, really key to continuing our progress on getting these audits caught up and then staying caught up and being on time for FY 24. So those are really the key points here. I just want to emphasize that we are making tremendous progress, and that is in part due to our partnership with this vendor. We are working to decrease our reliance by filling vacancies and having our contractors shift from doing the work to documenting the process and providing training to city staff. And with that, Madam Chair and councilors, I'm happy to take any questions.
Counselor Romero Worth, you pulled this. Would you like to address it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And really, I pulled it so that Director Oster could do exactly what she just did, which is provide some context and some emphasis on what this is and what it isn't, and how it's helping the city to meet our priority of getting the last audit that's late in and putting us on a track to be on time in the future. And again, this is a budget amendment. There's no money being added to the contract. And again, this contract is very important to support the finance department in this critical priority. And I think Director Oster did a perfect job of setting the context for what this does and what's happening here. So again, we're not adding money to the contract, we're adding money to the budget line item. And I think that's a key difference. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Garcia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple follow-ups on that. I appreciate the words and I like where we're at. First question would be in regards to our continued work on the fiscal year 24. What is it that is being done currently that I guess is something that's procedural, I would assume protocol, that we will be doing in the future that is that will keep us on track and will get us to the fiscal year, to the December deadline?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you, Councilor Garcia, for that question. One example that I'll give, I can give you several, but one that I'll start with is the preparation of our debt schedule. So this is information that's reported in our financial statements, and it doesn't have huge changes. We make our debt payments twice a year, and then if we were to issue additional bonds or participate in a different kind of financing, we would need to update our debt schedule. The Clifton Larson Allen consultants are currently training staff in our Treasury division on that process so that we can prepare the debt schedule ourselves for FY 24. We're also leveraging some of that bandwidth that we get through Clifton Larson Allen to help us document processes. And that's really important to making sure that we have sustainability in the long term. We strive to retain every member of the team, but people leave for various reasons, you know, we all hope to retire at some point. And we want to make sure that we're not creating single points of failure where we're transferring information from the contractors to one person without making sure that it's memorialized in a way that others will be able to access it in the future. Another example is the cash reconciliation, the bank reconciliation process. It's still very manual and it takes a lot of people effort and hours to do those reconciliations. The Clifton Larson Allen team is helping us do that during FY24 for FY24 activity. This is the first time that I've been a part of that here during my 1.5 year tenure with the city. We had always been reconciling after the fact, but now for FY24, we're in a place where we're reconciling activity during the fiscal year, and they're assisting in identifying transactions that may not have been recorded. We're just improving our timeliness, getting that recorded in Munis much more quickly. And until we get that treasury functionality implemented that will allow us to use auto reconciliation in the Munis system, the human effort that's involved in the reconciliation process is more than we have staff to perform. But with the assistance from the vendor, Clifton Larson Allen, we are able to reconcile during the fiscal year.
Thank you. The other question, my last question would just be in regards to CLA and what we pay them obviously every year to do what they're doing. You know, I get the volatility of the job market and availability of people that are applying and so on and so forth. When do we kind of foresee us kind of backing off from this extra expense and I guess in the future maybe identify the cost between having staff, if it's going to be that difficult to have staff, and how long would we consider possibly keeping CLA on as a vendor, as a as an entity with the city?
Thank you for that question. Thank you, Madam Chair and councilors, Councilor Garcia. We're working concurrently, you know, we're actively recruiting, we're trying to fill positions. We're focused on retention and professional development of our current staff so that we, you know, as they gain skills and knowledge and participate in trainings, we hope that our current staff will be able to advance. We want to provide opportunities for, you know, career development and growth for the current staff. So as far as, you know, the long-term goals with Clifton Larson Allen, I'm very proud that we're at a point now where we're not relying on them to simply do the work for us. We're getting their assistance, absolutely, and they're adding bandwidth to the team, but they're also documenting what they're doing and they're training city staff. So as we have more and more people come on board and as we fill those vacancies, the work can shift more and more. Also, you know, we're implementing some key functionality in the Munis system and additional technology that will help us take that workload more in-house and automate more of the process, which with bank reconciliation, I think it's a huge, huge benefit. We'll go from a system where we're looking at every transaction to allowing our technology to match things up and only using the human effort to address the things that didn't match in the automated process. And there's just such a huge volume that the amount of work that there is involved in the bank reconciliation process is such that, you know, no amount of technology is going to eliminate the human element of it. We're always going to need people to follow up on those reconciling items and to figure out what got missed and make sure that it gets recorded. Counselors, I think, you know, we are working to reduce our reliance on the contractor. And I think we are in a place where that's starting to happen for FY24, but we are not staffed at a level right now where we can fully absorb all that work. For example, in our controller group, we currently have a 50% vacancy rate. We have 5 out of 10 positions vacant. We're recruiting for those positions, but accountants are in high demand and so, it takes longer than we would like to fill the positions. Another thing that Clifton Larson Allen brings into the equation for us is they're a national organization. So they are able to draw from a larger talent pool than we are here locally.
Thank you, Director. Very good information to have and going forward, seeing where we will be in a year or 2 years from now, and hopefully we're in a better position than we have been in the past. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor Faulkner.
Just want to commend you on the training and also putting together a strategic plan for the future for how we can manage our fiscal responsibilities. It's a pretty heavy lift, and I think a lot of the things you're doing are good ideas. And so I thank you for your effort on that.
Thank you, Counselor. Anyone else?
Move to approve.
Second? I would add loud applause also, Director. We're getting there. We're on the right track, and I think we're making tremendous progress. I'm really impressed with the amount of work that's been completed, and we're cruising right toward the finish line with getting up to date on our audits, and all thanks to you and your staff and the team that you're building. I see a difference with camaraderie of people working together. It all makes a big difference. So thank you for your leadership on that. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have a roll call, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Are there any matters from staff that we haven't discussed?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to thank the committee for your support. It really means a lot to me and to the team. There are 40+ people in the finance department working very hard every day to help move the city forward and to, specifically get caught up on audits. And so hearing your support really means a lot to all of us. So just wanted to say thank you.
You're more than welcome. Matters from the committee? No matters from the chair, this chair. How about the other chair on the Zoom?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for chairing tonight. I have a bad cold. You do not want to be around me, and I really thank you for stepping in, and thank you to Director Oster and her staff for all the good work they're doing. That's it for
Thank you,
me.
Chair. Get well soon. Lots of rest, lots of liquids. And next meeting is February 26th, and we are adjourned.